Good evening and welcome to Decoding Your Ballot, Voter Research for the Busy Citizen. Before we begin, I do have a few housekeeping items. Everyone attending tonight is muted, and that is in order to maintain our best sound quality for the presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. If you don't see the chat, there should be a button right at the bottom of your screen that you can click to reveal it, and we will go through the questions at the end of the presentation. Also, I will be sending out the slides from tonight's presentation to everyone who is registered, if that is something you find useful to refer back to as you work to prepare for future elections. We are also recording tonight's event, so something to be aware of there. And if you like tonight's program, please check out more of our Who Gets to Vote lineup. You can visit our website at mykpl.info/whogets-to-vote. We're grateful to have Megan Brown here with us, who's an educational content specialist from Ballotpedia. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass the mic over to Megan so we can get started.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer. As she just mentioned, my name is Megan Brown and I work for Ballotpedia. We're a nonprofit encyclopedia of American politics. So we gather information on things like polling times, logistics for getting things on the ballot across all 50 states. And like she said, I'm here today to talk to you about decoding your ballot with a slight focus on local elections. So me personally, I got my MLIS from the University of British Columbia in 2015. And then I joined Ballotpedia in 2019. In graduate school, my focus was on the intersection of information policy, social media, filter bubbles, and politics. So I was really excited to come and speak to everyone tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. So share screen, desktop. And can everybody see my screen all right? Does that work? Yes, okay, wonderful. So decoding your ballot presented by Ballotpedia, clearly. So first I wanted to talk a little bit about why you should care about local elections, because there's something that is commonly overlooked, but at the same time have a lot to do with just your activities of daily living. So they determine, your property taxes, and likewise, property taxes, they have an effect on, rent and general housing affordability. So transit funding and maintenance. So one big thing over here, I'm in Michigan, is repairing the roads. We have a lot of potholes, but so like potholes, public transit, all of those decisions are made at the local level. How your community conceives of and addresses crime. So which tactic they prefer to take and what, so like what measures are put into place. For school boards, stuff like the school curriculum, school hours, other logistics about schooling that can impact, you or your children. So a lot of very, very important things that you encounter in your daily life are decided by local elections. And another other nice thing about local elections is that your vote really matters at the local level. Like there are multiple, Ballotpedia covers municipal races for the 100 largest cities in America, as well as all the state capitals. And there are multiple races that are decided by only a few dozen votes. So your vote does really matter. Unfortunately, it can be difficult to get information on or know how to find information on the candidates for local elections. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So first, I wanted to go into a little bit about just generally how elections work in terms of the different levels of government and who is in charge of things like election security or like election procedures and all of that, because a lot of that can also be very confusing. So as far as who runs elections, the supreme law of the land with regard to electoral procedures is the Constitution of the United States. So the Constitution says that the president needs to be 35 years old, and that's just non-negotiable. Likewise, the Constitution says that congressional representatives at the time that they take office must be living in the state they're a representative of. And that is, since that's spelled out in the Constitution, that's not something the states can change. However, the Constitution does delegate all non-explicit powers to states. And that means that if something about an election procedure is not mentioned in the Constitution, then it's up to the states to decide. And the only way to overturn that is if it's challenged in court and the Supreme Court declares it to be unconstitutional. So this is why you can have things like different laws for voter ID or for polling times, or different, some places vote with paper ballots and some vote with machine ballots. And that's why. It's because each state is responsible for administering its own election. And then within that, these states offer varying levels of control to their county level administrative divisions or their municipalities. So some states might require that, for example, all counties run their elections in a particular way, whereas other states might say, okay, we're going to demand, or we're going to say you have to have the polls open from this time to this time, but we're going to let you decide like all of the specifics when it comes to like where the voting places are and stuff. So really, we don't really have a single election so much as we have dozens of different and interconnected systems, which is why some of this information can be so difficult to find. So essentially, each level of government runs its election subject to the oversight of the levels above it. So a municipality might run its own election. Kenosha runs its elections, but they're subject to county, state, and federal law. And then the county runs elections, but they're subject to state and federal law, and then so on and so forth. And because of that, it is often, if you have a question about some aspect of security or logistics or something like that, it's often best to go to the local level first, because basically each level of government adds like new rules. And so the municipalities and the local level are going to be able to tell you the local, county, state, and federal rules, where if you only ask, say, the state, they may only tell you the state and federal rules, and that may not apply if your county or city has like additional rules. So I apologize, it's complicated. It is what it is. However, hope is not lost, because you can figure this stuff out. So in terms of the logistics for things like how to vote, so how to register, what you need to bring with you to vote, when the polls are open, information on absentee and mail-in ballots and all of that. You always want to prioritize official government sources. It's best to get your information about how to vote from the people who are running the election. Ballotpedia, we get all of our information directly from state and federal elections agencies. And the reason for this is the example I would give is, let's say that there's a polling place that's set to open on Tuesday for an election, and a pipe bursts on Monday night and it floods and it can't open, and they need to change the polling place. Since the city of Kenosha in this particular case would be the one making that decision, they're going to be the ones who would know about it first. So you can do that. You can go online. So if you prefer to use social media accounts to follow them, you can do that. You can go to websites. If you don't have internet access, or you just don't like doing things that way, you can also call, or you can write them if you're hard of hearing or you can't use telephones. They will have that information available to you. And then as you can see on the slide here, I did put some information for the city and county of Kenosha specifically, but if you're living in a nearby county, so if you're in like Racine County, for example, you would substitute, Racine County, or, likewise, if, you live in a different municipality. And I did, the state of Wisconsin actually has an amazing site. So the My Vote Wisconsin site has wonderful information about like how to register, how to find out where you should vote, like specific things that are on your ballot. So like the logistics of voting. However, as we all know, going and voting is like 10% of the work of being an engaged citizen, because you also have to find information on who and what to vote for. And that in particular can be really difficult when it comes to local elections. So, and the reasons for that are, so many sources that we rely to help us decide who to vote for at the higher level, they don't cover local elections. So maybe, you feel very passionately about an issue. So you go and you see like which organizations are endorsing candidates. Well, they're probably not going to endorse for like Kenosha City Council. So you can't look at that. And likewise, many issues that we use as a bellwether for deciding whether to vote for a candidate are either, not part of a local election. So, whether a candidate is pro-life or pro-choice might be really important to you, but maybe if not somebody who's running for like county drain commissioner. Or that you might not even know, because if they're running for an election and you judge based on an issue that isn't relevant in that election, you may not know what their position is. And so you can't use that to determine how you would like to vote. And then the third problem is that often information on candidates, particularly at the local level, can be really hard to find. If you go into Google and you plug in, Joe Biden or like Donald Trump or Mitt Romney or any one of the presidents or presidential candidates from the past 10 years, you're going to find a deluge of information. But if you Google a local school board candidate or a local judicial candidate, often you'll only find their name. And so that can be very, very discouraging when it comes to wanting to participate in your local elections. So what are we going to do? Are we condemned to flipping a coin, to trying to determine who to vote for based on, random luck? We're not. We just have to be a little creative about it. So in terms of finding information on local candidates and then also local issues like amendments to a city charter or a library bond measure or property tax measures, if that's something that is done via ballot measures at your particular local level. So there are 4 steps to finding information on these local issues. And of course, only 3 of them fit on the first slide. So apologies, everyone there. So the first thing is you want to know what each position or each measure is responsible for or actually does. So you can ask your local librarian or another research professional for help. You can check with your municipal or county government. Another good source is if you're comfortable going directly to, say, the city charter to figure out the responsibilities of like council members and mayors and so on and so forth. If it's a measure, read the text of the measure. So get a good understanding of like what you're actually voting for. Like, what does this person do? Because that's important. And the second thing is you need to decide what matters to you. Everybody makes our own decisions in terms of how and why we vote. And so it's important to, at the local level, you need to figure out which issues matter to you, because while national elections, usually like you have a lot of people doing like media analysis and endorsements and stuff like that to kind of give you an idea of what the big issues are. On the local level, it's really, really personal. So maybe you want focus on housing costs. In my municipality, a huge thing is the condition of the roads. So deciding what matters to you, maybe what matters to you is developing the business community in Kenosha. Everybody has their own metrics for determining who to vote for, and you need to figure those out ahead of time. And then once you know what matters to you, then you're going to search out information about that issue or topic. And there are 2 components to that. So first, you want to look at, what are candidates and campaigns promising you? What are they saying that they're going to do? And you can find that the candidates themselves. So candidates will have websites, social media, where you can reach out directly to the candidate to ask. That is one major benefit of local elections, is that it's often much easier to get into contact with the people who are running. Or another thing that you can do is check out local newspaper or TV coverage of the election, because a national outlet or even a state outlet probably isn't going to cover your municipal elections, but if you have local media, then they will. And this doesn't have to be something official too, because particularly for a lot of smaller municipalities, look at things like volunteer records, look at things like billboards at the gas station in town. Check out, announcements on like I'm sorry, I'm forgetting, but like check around. It doesn't necessarily have to be like an official local newspaper or like an official local, TV news affiliate. And the second thing is if somebody is an incumbent, you want to judge based on their past performance. And that can be very difficult when it comes to local elections. But there are ways around that. So many local governments, Kenosha and Racine included, provide information on their budgets and other committee meetings. And some of them are even on video. So you can watch them, you can see how they interact with each other, you can look at their agendas, and you can determine what did this person say they were going to accomplish and did they actually do it. Another particularly tricky area can be judicial candidates. So judicial candidates can be very tricky to research, particularly since those elections are commonly nonpartisan. So the candidates are not required to affiliate themselves with a political party. If you use that as one of your guides to knowing who to vote for, that doesn't help you. However, one thing that you can do is you can see how they're evaluated by professional organizations. So legal organizations like state bar associations will often write about some of these candidates and their issues. And if you're not comfortable with legal material, because it can be very opaque and use a lot of jargon, consider reaching out to a librarian and another research professional if you have access to one. And they can help you understand with that, or you can all just get together with a group of people and go through it with each other, help each other. And the last thing that I wanted to bring up there was for finding information on local candidates and issues. Always remember that not voting for like one particular office is an option at the local level, where it's very common for people to run unopposed or for information to just plain not be available. You are totally allowed to, like, if there are 10 offices on your ballot, you can vote for 8, you can vote for 9, you can vote for 6. Your vote will be counted if you even vote for one of those offices. So it is an option to, if you look and look and look and you cannot find information that would let you make a good choice, you are allowed to leave it blank if that is your preference. And that can actually convey like a lot to candidates, especially at the local level, where responsiveness to your constituents and your potential constituents is a valid way to evaluate whether or not somebody would make a good office holder. And I did want to just introduce a few tips and tricks for rural elections, because I know that Kenosha, it has a decent size, but there are a lot of municipalities out to the west that are smaller, and those can be very difficult to find elections for. Like, say you're in Kenosha County, but you're not in the city of Kenosha. So that can be very difficult because rural counties and small municipalities often don't make their information available online or in any kind of easy format. And that goes back to when I was talking about how elections are run. Because elections are run locally, how much information is available depends very much on like how big the office is, how many people are working there. The city of Kenosha has, dedicated staff to help handle requests, but a village of 200 people, the clerk may be somebody who's volunteering 10 hours a week. That's obviously, they're not going to be able to do as much or provide as much information. And the other problem is that they can lack local news sources. So, I mean, if you have a local television affiliate that does the local news, that's great. If you have a local paper or two, that's great. But it's 2022, and a lot of smaller cities and smaller towns and smaller villages don't have local news sources. And so you're like, well, Megan, you told me to go check the local news. There is no local news. What am I supposed to do? It's okay. So if you get stuck, you want to go old school. So you want to wake up and pretend that it's 1985. So you can call the county or town/village government or clerk, or even go pay them a visit in person. You can't do that necessarily in Chicago, but you can totally do that in a small village. Another thing to note is that candidates need to register in order to run for office. They need to file paperwork. And the paperwork often includes some kind of contact information. So if you cannot find any contact information on a candidate, you can call local government and be like, hey, did they share like a campaign email or like a campaign phone number or something? Because a lot of times at the local level in smaller municipalities, the candidates will have like an address or something set up or be open to communication, but they just don't communicate that very well. So it's often up to you to kind of bridge that gap. But if you go and you seek out the information and contact them, they're going to be very responsive to you, which is fantastic. Oh, didn't intend to move on so quickly, but yeah. So I just wanted to leave some time for questions. I think I went a little quicker than I anticipated, but that's fine.